Money has always shaped the world. Empires rise and fall on wealth. Wars are fought over it. Destinies are determined by it. But what happens when the world's wealthiest individuals decide to use their fortunes not to maintain the status quo, but to overturn it? This is the story of the billionaire gender equality revolution, and why it's both our greatest hope and most uncomfortable contradiction. Welcome to the fight where money meets conscience, where privilege confronts justice, and where the question isn't just, can billionaires change the world, but should they? The year was 2019. Melinda French Gates stood at a crossroads. For 25 years, she had co-chaired the world's largest private foundation, billions invested in global health, millions of lives saved. But something was profoundly wrong. Despite all that money, all that effort, one barrier remained stubbornly immovable: gender inequality. She had seen it everywhere: in developing nations where girls couldn't attend school, in boardrooms where women's voices went unheard, in hospitals where women's pain was dismissed. In every corner of the globe, half the population was systematically held back, and Melinda realized something crucial. Traditional philanthropy wasn't moving fast enough. The world didn't need more charity. It needed a revolution. So she made a decision that would reshape modern philanthropy: $1 billion, her own money, dedicated specifically to advancing women's power, not just helping women, empowering them, not just treating symptoms, changing systems. This was pivotal ventures, and it was just the beginning. But Melinda wasn't alone. Across the country, another woman was already rewriting the rules: MacKenzie Scott. Fresh from her divorce from Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, she became one of the wealthiest women in history. And unlike her ex-husband building rockets to space, MacKenzie looked inward, to the communities suffering on Earth. Between 2020 and 2024, she gave away $19.3 billion. Let that sink in. $19 billion to over 1,600 organizations. But it wasn't just the amount. It was how she gave. No applications, no proposals, no strings attached. Just massive grants directly to organizations led by women, people of color, and marginalized communities. Her philosophy declared, "I'm not interested in having buildings named after me. I'm interested in changing systems." Together with Melinda, she launched Equality Can't Wait, $40 million for gender justice. The message was clear: the revolution had funding. While women billionaires grabbed headlines, a quieter revolution was happening among wealthy men, those willing to acknowledge their privilege and weaponize it for equality. Take Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, a man who built an empire on smart investments. But what did he consider his smartest investment? His belief in women. When Buffett transferred nearly $1 billion to his son Peter's Novo Foundation, he gave a directive: focus on women and girls. Peter and his wife Jennifer took it seriously. They directed $90 million specifically to young women of color. Their programs reached 500,000 girls across 80 nations. As Peter explained, empowering women in developing countries is one of the most efficient ways to raise all boats. It was his father's pragmatism with a feminist twist. Then there's Richard Branson, the Virgin Group founder, known more for publicity stunts than social justice. But quietly, he made gender equality a business priority. Virgin startup committed to equal gender-based funding, actively challenging the male-dominated venture capital world. And let's not forget Laurene Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow. She transformed $12 billion into the Emerson Collective, tackling immigration, education, and women's empowerment, especially in Central America, where gender inequality fuels migration crises. These weren't just performative gestures. This was a strategic deployment of capital to restructure power itself. But where exactly does all this money flow? What does a gender equality revolution actually look like? Well, it stands on 4 pillars. Pillar 1: economic power. Melinda identified a brutal fact: only 2% of venture capital goes to women-led startups. 2%. So Pivotal Ventures invested in female-founded VC firms, breaking the cycle that starved women entrepreneurs. MacKenzie directed hundreds of millions to organizations providing economic training, legal advocacy, and child care support, the very infrastructure women need to compete. Pillar 2. Political representation. They didn't just fund nonprofits, they funded power itself. They supported organizations that train women to run for office, backed female candidates, and lobbied for paid leave, equal pay laws, and reproductive rights. By 2024, a record 150 women served in the U.S. Congress. Pillar 3. Healthcare and autonomy. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, the philanthropic response was massive. Melinda redirected $250 million to reproductive health. MacKenzie gave record grants to abortion funds and maternal health initiatives. Lorene invested in menopause care, a sector that medicine had long ignored. And finally, Pillar 4. The cultural narrative. They understood that money alone doesn't change culture. You need to control the story. Lorene bought The Atlantic magazine. Melinda funded documentaries. MacKenzie supported investigative journalism. As Powell Jobs said, if we don't tell our stories, someone else will, and get them wrong. 4 pillars, 1 revolution. But not everyone was celebrating. Critics on the left argued that billionaires shouldn't exist at all, that Melinda, MacKenzie, and others were just rearranging deck chairs on capitalism's sinking ship. You can't solve inequality with charity from people who benefit most from that inequality, activists wrote, and they had a point. This wealth was accumulated through systems built on exploitation, Amazon's warehouse workers, Microsoft's tax havens, the very structures that perpetuate the gender pay gap. Was this genuine transformation or just reputation management? Meanwhile, conservatives saw something sinister, a radical feminist agenda aimed at destroying traditional families. When fossil fuel companies began funding anti-trans organizations as a cultural wedge, the gender wars exploded. And there was a third criticism, perhaps the most uncomfortable of all, the white savior problem. Many of these billionaires were wealthy white women from Western nations. Were they truly empowering women of color, or were they imposing their own brand of privileged feminism? Some organizations even began rejecting large donations, arguing, we don't need billionaire saviors, we need structural change. Despite the controversies, the numbers tell a story. $2.2 billion moved to gender equality work between 2014 and 2024. 1,600 organizations funded. 500,000 girls reached. Venture capital for women doubled, still low at 4%, but it's progress. 150 women in Congress. Multiple states passed paid leave laws, salary transparency requirements, and expanded childcare subsidies. But more significantly, the conversation shifted. Gender equality wasn't a niche issue anymore. It became central to economics, governance, and social stability. Companies started competing for investment from female-led VC firms. Male CEOs began supporting paid leave. Universities expanded women's studies programs. Research on gender bias in AI and medicine exploded. The revolution wasn't complete, but the tectonic plates had begun to shift. In November 2024, Melinda French Gates announced another $1 billion over 2 years, bringing her total investment to over $5 billion. I've been told to set my agenda before someone else sets it, she wrote. Every dollar invested in women returns exponentially. MacKenzie continued her giving spree, now funding male-led organizations working on gender equality, recognizing that men must be part of the solution. The Buffett children committed to giving away their father's entire $145 billion fortune, with gender justice at its core. And a new generation emerged. Rihanna, Beyoncé, Dolly Parton, self-made billionaire women who built empires without inheriting from husbands or fathers. Their philanthropy combines celebrity influence with strategic giving. The billionaire gender equality revolution remains deeply paradoxical. It has mobilized unprecedented resources for gender justice, but it raises uncomfortable questions about whether systemic change can come from those who benefit most from the existing systems. The critics are right. Philanthropy can't replace structural reforms like progressive taxation, universal child care, mandated pay equity, and proportional representation. Charity is not a substitute for justice, but supporters counter, perfection shouldn't be the enemy of progress. While we work toward systemic change, millions of women need help today. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Billionaire philanthropy can be genuinely helpful and structurally insufficient at the same time. It can open doors while reminding us those doors shouldn't have been locked in the first place. What's undeniable is that Melinda French Gates, MacKenzie Scott, the Buffett family, and others have proved that concentrated wealth can be weaponized for good. That money, historically a tool of oppression, can become an engine of liberation. The revolution they funded is incomplete, and true gender equality remains distant. But the trajectory has shifted. The question isn't whether billionaires should lead this fight. It's whether we'll use this moment to build systems where such extreme wealth no longer exists, and gender justice is woven into the very fabric of society. Until then, the billionaires and the revolution march on. Imperfect allies in an imperfect fight for a more perfect world. The revolution will be funded. The question is, will it be enough? Subscribe for more stories about power, money, and the fight for justice. Because understanding wealth means understanding how to change the world.